Welcome everyone, especially our students, our sophomore participants. This is the first plenary session of Sophomore Career Connections, which has turned into a week-long virtual affair this year. So excited to welcome you. My name is Stacy Bingham. I'm the Associate Dean of the College for Career Development here at Vassar. We are thrilled to have you taking part in Sophomore Career Connections, which is a collaborative program from the CDO and the Office of Alumni Affairs and Development. As part of the lead up to the week's events, I am so excited that you'll have the opportunity to chat with the veteran SCC presenter, Natalie Nixon, class of 91. She is amazing at what she does. And I am also excited to welcome our Dean of the College, Carlos Alamo, here to say a few words of welcome and to introduce Natalie. So without further ado, Carlos, Dean Alamo.
Thanks, Dean Bingham. So I actually just wanted to start first by saying a couple of things. One, for all the students who are here, I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. Campus is very empty. It's actually full of snow right now, but it's empty of students. So I'm really excited to see you all, although the first week is going to be not too much fun as we get all the testing done and get our baseline established on campus, but very excited to welcome you all back to the spring semester. Secondly, I also just wanted to take this moment to thank Dean Bingham, as well as everyone in the CDO office, as well as the folks in OAD, including Willa, who's here on the call as well, for helping to organize Sophomore Career Connections. This is an incredible lift, I know, for that office, and it requires a lot of work and coordination. And not to mention that the CDO office has also already been working really hard over the break just to set up a variety of other forms of programming that they did for many students that you could take while you were away and back home. So just from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you for that work. It doesn't go unnoticed, and it's really meaningful and important to our students. So thank you. That said, I'm also really honored to welcome Natalie Nixon, our host for this special Sophomore Career Connections workshop. As Dean Bingham mentioned, this is Natalie's third time at Sophomore Career Connections. She was here in 2017, 2018, and now 2021. And her second time presenting a special workshop. In 2018, she did a memorable student-facing session in the Villard room where she had all the students lay on the floor with paper and Sharpies as part of the workshop. And so this is like a big kind of deal, and everyone was really excited by what happened that day. So suffice to say that we are all super interested to see what you come up with today. A bit about Natalie. Natalie Nixon, class of 91, the infamous class of 91, actually, Natalie, right? Like that's a really famous class, lots of great alums who I hang out with regularly. That's a different session. We can talk about that at some other point. But Natalie Nixon changes lives through ideas so that people get paid their worth. And I just actually love that is like part of the first thing that we say in your intro is like getting people to get paid their worth, to have them make an impact and build their creative confidence for years to come. As president of Figure 8 Thinking, she advises leaders and executive teams on how to achieve transformative business results by applying creativity and foresight. Prior to Figure 8 Thinking, she was a professor for 16 years. Natalie is an early stage investor at 2 social impact ventures. She's valued for her ability to work at the intersection of commercial value and stakeholder equity. When she's not dancing up in a storm in a hip hop class, she's fine tuning her foxtrot and salsa. And this is actually one of the first things that Natalie and I bonded around was this idea that she loves salsa, as well as tango on the ballroom floor. She lives in her hometown of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with her husband, John Nixon, and she's the proud stepmother of Sydney. After her receiving her BA in anthropology, and so Natalie, just so you know, I'm very tight about you being an anthropologist. I think I've shared this with you before. But I've kind of like learned to start letting that go, but also in Africana Studies from Vassar College. Natalie obtained an MS in Global Textile Marketing from Thomas Jefferson University and a PhD in Design Management from the University of Westminster. Recently, Natalie also joined the Board of Trustees of the college here at Vassar, and she's quickly become one of my favorite board members. And I really mean that, and please just don't tell all the other ones because don't get mad, Natalie. But seriously, she's a compassionate, incredibly thoughtful, like when we're at our board meetings, like I always just like, Natalie raises her hand, I get really excited because I know she's gonna have an amazing question to ask the group. But she's also a supportive ally and a partner to me as I work to create the kind of college I know Vassar can become. Last year, Natalie published The Creativity Leap, Unleash Curiosity, Improvisation, and Intuition at Work. I actually spent a bit of time this weekend working through the book. I have my own signed copy. I was bragging to everyone else earlier. And everyone will be getting their own copy, I believe, from the CDO office in a special package. I don't know if that was a surprise and I just ruined it, so I'm sorry, Stacy, if I did. Um, and in the Creativity Leap, Natalie draws from her background on the social sciences. And I say social sciences there because I had, again, a hard time saying anthropology, and carves out a model for how rigorous creativity and innovation can radically transform any kind of work that we do. In one of my favorite passages, Natalie notes, quote, "As a collective of humans on this earth, we need to piece together a world of work that does not yet exist, one where people show up fully invited to bring their whole selves to their jobs and to create," end quote. We live in a moment in a world where the merging of the diagnostic and imaginary capacity, something that's really fundamental to social science thinking in our humanity, is sorely needed. I'm so happy to welcome Natalie back to Vassar to show us this way. Please join me in welcoming the amazing Natalie Nixon.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Carlos. That was really making me blush. And I'm really proud to be a Vassar alum and really happy to know you as a friend and colleague and all of the staff and team that's worked really hard to put this together. So thank you for that incredible introduction. Hey guys, hey sophomores. It's awesome to virtually be with you. And I in the bio that Carlos read, he referenced I'm the proud stepmother of Sydney. Our daughter Sydney is also a sophomore in college, and so I have some. It resonates with me a bit how challenging this time has been for you as a college student. And what I'm here to do today, between now and about 5 p.m. Eastern time, is to first just assure and affirm you all that you are absolutely on the right path, having chosen an amazing college like Vassar College, where you are receiving a stellar education and you are totally equipping yourself for what in a lot of business pop culture parlance we call a VUCA world, a VUCA environment that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so what I like to do is spend like 15 minutes, and I'm putting my timer on to keep me honest, just sharing some ideas and context about the way I've been thinking about these times and how relevant creativity is. And I'm going to have a few interactive moments where I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm going to ask you to jot down some of your thoughts in the chat. And Will or Carlos will help me read out what your responses are. And it was very important that you came with a piece of paper and a pen or a Sharpie, so make sure that's nearby. And I want to give us 15 to 20 minutes in a breakout session for you to share on your interpretation of some of the prompts that I'm going to give you. And then we'll do a brief share out and then we'll bid adieu. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to begin giving you a bit of context. So the way I'm framing my remarks are about making a creative leap, and there's a reason why I have made the word leap into an acronym. More on that later. So this is our life right now. This is the incredible illustration by Adrian Tomine, an illustration called Love Life. It's on the December 7th cover of the New Yorker magazine. And if you just study this illustration, like PS, hashtag biggest regret as a Vassar alum, I never took an art history class. So this is my moment to like faux diagnose this piece of art, but which I'm obviously not going to do any justice to. But anyway, I just love the details in this illustration. I love, over here, there's a smidgen view of the unmade bed. There's the duality of our lives right now of putting on our Zoom face. Maybe she's having a Zoom date, I'm not sure, but she's still slightly distracted. There are Amazon boxes littering the floor and coffee cups and hand sanitizer and Cheetos or snack food and old discarded Chinese food container in the kitchen. bottles of wine on top of the fridge and maybe a rice cooker she hasn't taken out for months, et cetera, et cetera. But what this visual also says to me is that our next normal is a normal where we will have to be balancing blurred boundaries between work and home, work and life, work and play. And one of the ways I believe we can maintain our sanity and sense of self in doing that is by exercising our creativity. So this time is really requiring us to be grounded in a very different true north. Maybe this is what Vassar's looking like right now. Carlos mentioned there's a lot of snow on the ground. So hadn't picked this picture intentionally, but maybe this is what it looks like a bit right now in Poughkeepsie and in Vassar specifically. So we got to figure out our orientation that will really ground us. And this statement may either terrify you or relieve you. So newsflash, plans are fiction. Now, I'm saying that in part to be super provocative, but also because it's true. Plans are fiction. Like, it hasn't happened yet. That's why they're fiction. Now, I'm not saying that to say that you should let go of your to-do lists or your year-long goals or your 5-year plan, whatever is your jam. But understand that unless you take an you equip yourself with an adaptive mindset, you are going to be supremely frustrated, especially as we are trying to navigate this increasingly complex and ambiguous world. So if this can be reassuring to you, I hope it is, keep in mind that, write your plans in pencil. Because we don't have, a way to see into the future. We don't have a way to truly predict the future. But what we can do is be super observant of the present and really listen and be attuned to what, in my work, I call signals on the landscape. And the great news is that you are totally equipped to do that. And that's because you improvise every day. And don't think of improvisation only as some like scary thing that you could never do because you don't know how to do a really cool jazz riff solo, or you're not one of those super talented comedic actors who are on the Saturday Night Live cast, right? But I'm sure if you reflect back on your day leading up to now, you've had to hack your way through something. Like, for example, in this very moment, I am talking to you through Zoom, and I have a ring light up and it quivers sometimes. So I totally have it like taped in strategic places so that it doesn't waver and quiver. So that's an example of improvising so that I can adapt to the realities of this Zoom life. So you improvise every day. And the more you engage with that ability, the better off you are. I'm from Philly. I live back in my hometown, and in a lot of urban cities, I guess that's redundant, a lot of cities around America, especially where I grew up, where sometimes we didn't get the best investments in our recs, parks and recs. Then kids, young Black teens especially, knew how to improvise. And what I love about this photo is how subversive it is. So they have hacked a basketball hoop with, cutting out the bottom of a milk crate and tacked it under a sign that says no ball playing, which I really love. Okay, so back to this reality of having to toggle between work and play, work and life. And right now it feels pretty crazy and hectic. And back to my assertion that the way we will make this a bit more seamless and sane is by exercising our innate creativity. I referenced that I like to collect signals on the landscape, and I'm just going to share a couple with you. This was actually one of the signals on the landscape that I've been collecting, these blurred boundaries that we have between work and life, work and play. Here's another one. Guys, we are now in the fourth industrial revolution. It's off the chain, but the train has left the station. This is a photograph from a restaurant in Guangdong province in China, in southern China. This is just from a week or so ago. And this is a restaurant where robots make the food, right? And so the fourth industrial revolution is characterized by ubiquitous technology. And for example, I have an Alexa app. I'm speaking softly so it doesn't start to ding, ding, ding right here in my home office. That's powered by both augmented reality and artificial intelligence. I know I all the time use Google as a search engine to look up terminology, references, that's powered by AI. And a lot of surgeries today in hospitals are done with robotics. So this is what we mean by in this fourth industrial revolution, where technology is ubiquitous. For some, this is a dystopian site, right? And for others, they might think, oh, well, there's going to be some casualties as tasks get taken over by automation, but pretty much we'll all be fine. And that's a utopian view, maybe. I look at it much more as my friend and colleague Galit Ariel calls a heterotopia. There's going to be a mix of both. And here's the silver lining for me. In a world where tech is ubiquitous, the companies and organizations that you will one day lead and go to work for soon after you graduate or even get internships in will be the ones that make more room for the human to show up. And that means that they're making more room for creativity to show up. So here's another signal on the landscape. This is the company Carvana. This is a great example of what I call a mashup. Can you imagine this meeting where someone walked in and said, okay, here's the idea. Think about a vending machine and car sales. And some people are like, no, I don't get it. And other people are like, that's interesting, say more. And some people might have been resisting because they're like, how the heck, that's a crazy engineering feat. How are we going to make that work? Other people might have thought, heck, no one is ever going to buy a car without really being able to give it a test drive and try it on. But more and more, those of you who are able to orient your thinking in the art of the remix and the mashup, and by the way, by getting a liberal arts education, you totally are equipping yourself to do that, will be in the vanguard. So here's my first interactive question. I'd like you to jot down your thoughts in the chat. How do you define creativity? What's creativity to you? I'm going to stop sharing. I'd love to see some of the thoughts you add. Just add to the chat, a couple phrases. What's creativity? How do you think about it? Exploration, thank you. Self-expression, generating new ideas, self-expression, thinking outside the box, letting imagination take over, innovation, collaborative development, nice. Adaptability, awesome. Dynamic exploration, finding unique solutions. The ability to make new and unusual ideas, good artistic skills, unrestricted thinking. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so one of the things I love about my work as a creativity strategist is that I get to connect with people on this level of really exploring what creativity means to them, how it shows up in their work and in their world, and it just adds value to the way that to the work that I do in my speaking, my writing, and my advising. So thank you for sharing that. So now, I wanted to give you first dibs, and I'd like to share next a little bit about how I've been thinking about creativity. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my slide. And sometimes, especially with some of the companies that I've worked with, they'll use language like the creatives will take care of it, or I'm not a creative type because I can't fill in the blank, sing, act, dance, paint, write poetry, right? And what's happening when we only think about creativity in terms of ability to play a musical instrument, or to while away the afternoon in an idyllic space with the sun shafting down onto you, or dancers who are able to tell story through movement. When we only think about creativity in these terms, we do everyone a disservice because we end up ghettoizing creativity. We end up siloing it among the arts. That's not fair to artists, and it's not beneficial to our society at large. Because from my perspective, to be human, means to be hardwired to be creative. So here's how I think about creativity. Oops, let me go back to that. I think about creativity as our ability to toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems, full stop. That's how I think about it. If at any moment in your life and your work and your studies, you find yourself toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems, you are engaged in creative acts. And also ellipses to create novel value at scale, social value, financial value, and cultural value. This slide back here was just kind of another example of how I see more and more thought leaders, robust institutions really starting with leading with creativity. For example, the World Economic Forum has been listing creativity as the top 3 job skill for 2020 and beyond since 2016. And companies like Steelcase have done all sorts of cool research about how more people want to be more creative in their role. They're lacking guidance or permission to be creative. And much more attention is being given to you folks, Gen Z, Centennials, as well as folks a little older than you, Millennials, who are showing much more creative ambition than folks like me, and want to be able to have their creative ambition in their workplace in addition to financial remuneration. These are all good signals as it relates to creativity. And as Carlos already mentioned, you're going to be receiving a copy of this book that I wrote, The Creativity Leap, where you can read much more about it at your leisure. And I know how much leisure you're going to have once you get back to campus. So this is actually creativity too. So this woman in the black dress, Nicole Pittman, she's an attorney. She's one of the country's foremost thought leaders on policy making around child sex offenders. And what I learned from her was her incredible ability to ask new and different questions to build bridges and alliances. The woman smelling my arm is Celine Barrel. She's a nose. She works at International Flavors and Fragrances, and she's constantly toggling between intuition and chemistry. The gentleman in the black and white photo is John Harker, our family plumber. He was shocked when I asked to interview him for a book on creativity I was writing. And then he waxed poetic about all I see behind he goes, all I have is my flashlight to go behind the wall. He's a systems designer because he's working with the carpenters and the electricians and the homeowner and the architects. And finally, this couple on the bottom left, they're farmers. Gary and Amy Mainoff own a 5-acre fruit farm just outside of Philly in New Hope. And I learned their ability to improvise dramatically. If you think you are trying to survive in a VUCA world, try managing the earth, Mother Nature, every single day. And they're standing in front of one of their newest innovations, a cidery. The guy in the red t-shirt works at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. I visited his team out in Pasadena, California. And they are a group of social scientists, artists, and designers who work with aerospace engineers and physicists who are planning and designing unmanned craft going up to Mars, et cetera. And the gentleman in the middle is Randy Swearer, a former colleague who works at Autodesk. And he talked to me about orthogonal thinking and cognitive diversity. So this is creativity. So let me break down wonder a little bit more. Socrates and other major intellectual heavy hitters have given a lot of credence to wonder. Socrates said that wisdom begins in wonder. The Jewish theologian and civil rights activist Abraham Heschel said that it's wonder rather than doubt, which is the root of all knowledge. So here's a moment for you to add to the chat, who for you, living or dead, do you consider a wonder mentor? So for me, one of my wonder mentors are children. They're constantly helping me to dream, to be more curious, to envision much bigger than I currently can, to dream, to embrace what's emergent, to pretend. So when you think about who for you, living or dead, would you consider a wonder mentor? My words, not yours. Who would that be? I'm going to stop sharing. I'd love to see what you add to the chat. Who for you is a wonder mentor? Betsy Bradley, nice, high praise. King Rama IX of Thailand. Wow, your sister, nice. Scientists, mathematicians, yes, yes, yes. Your high school English teacher, love it. David Bowie, absolutely. Awesome. So the reason why I'm asking you to articulate who for you is a wonder mentor is we must have these memes, these archetypes present for us to trigger that sort of thinking. I didn't go through all the attributes, but I think you got the idea. Wonder is about big, blue sky, audacious thinking, asking humongous what if questions. It's about awe and it's about pausing, and it is essential to make the space and the time to do that. So I'm going to go back to my screen. Thank you for all those great examples. And next I want to do a little bit more dive into rigor. So the original Renaissance man himself is known for having said that any obstacle can be destroyed through rigor. So what's rigor? It's discipline. It's showing up over and over and over again. It's time on task. It's commitment. It's practice. It's not particularly sexy. It's often very solitary. And do not conflate rigor for rigidity. They're not the same thing. So my next question for you is, who for you, living or dead, is a rigor mentor? I'm going to stop sharing. I'd love for you to add. For me, it's someone like Twyla Tharp, the American choreographer and dancer, who is fastidious about her practice. She's famous for having written in her great book, The Creative Habit, before you can think out of the box, you have to start with a box, right? So who for you is a rigor mentor? So just add it to the chat. Nice, Alvin Ailey, absolutely. Who else? RBG, nice, Alison Bechtel. More rigor mentors, living or dead. I also think sometimes of Harriet Tubman, the discipline and both visions she had. Don't be surprised if your wonder and mentors and your rigor mentors kind of overlap. That's totally normal if that happens. Bernie, okay, awesome. All right, so I'm getting closer to the part of this where I'd like you to do a little bit more doing on your paper, and it's related to what I call the 3 I's. I realized it wasn't enough for me to just tell people, oh, toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems. All right, how do you get better at that? Well, in my view, the way we can get better at toggling between wonder and rigor to solve problems, in other words, to be more creative, we can exercise our creativity by the 3 I's. And the 3 I's are inquiry, improvisation, and intuition. And those all, when we flow all between those, we get to incredible insight. So inquiry is about curiosity. It's asking new and different questions. Improvisation is about being adaptive, super fixed in the present state, saying yes and, not, yeah, but we tried that 3 months ago and it didn't work, or a flat out no. And intuition is essential for decision making. Intuition is pattern recognition. And it is, we all are equipped with a human antenna inside of us. We all have something inside of us called the vagus nerve, not Las Vegas, Vegas, but VAGUS. And it's a nerve that extends from our cranium down through our heart into our gut. So literally when we say things like, my gut is telling me, that's real. Okay, so these are the 3 I's. And I'm going to do a short exercise. You see before you an apple. And in order to do this exercise on how you guys could start thinking about your leap, I have a real apple right here in my hands. And we're going to focus for the purposes of brevity and the amount of time we have together today, we're going to focus on the I that's around inquiry, about asking new and different questions. Now, while I realize that you are an incredible college like Vassar, where you are encouraged to pose new and different and provocative questions, there's a big old scary world out here where, you know, sometimes people feel a little penalized for asking questions. And yet we know, at least I know, that questions are inputs into a system. If we start asking new and different questions, we can start getting new and different outputs. So take this ordinary apple, and I'd like you to please just start jotting down questions, because asking questions is a way of thinking. Jot down as many why questions as you possibly can about apples. So why are apples? Type it in. And I'll read out your questions, just questions, not statements, not answers, just questions. Why? Why are apples so delicious? Thank you. Why? They can be mundane questions. They can be air quotes, obvious questions. Why? Why are apples better in the Hudson Valley? Why are some apples red? Why can't apples be purple? Love it. Why? Nice. Awesome. Why are apples round? Why do apples keep the doctor away? Why do apples grow in this shape? Why are there so many varieties? Okay. Awesome. Cool. Hold on to those why questions. Next, shift to converting those why questions to what if questions. What if, please begin. What if apples were build on some of your why questions. What if apples weren't crunchy? What if apples were bigger? What if apples were terrible? What if they were poisonous? What if apples were square? What if they were grow in the ground? What if apples were shaped like bananas? What if apples were sentient? Ooh, what if apples were homes with tiny creatures? What if apples were square? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so now lastly, please start typing in a series of how questions. How might, you could write HMW, how might we? So we went from why to what if, and now we're gonna converge to how. How might we what with these apples? How? How might we increase the yield of apple trees? How might we reshape apples? How might we give apples more seeds? How might we use apples to make cider? How might we change the growth process of apples? How might we use apples to combat global hunger? How can we make apples bigger? Might we ruin the reputation of apples? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so what I'm getting at is, well, first of all, think about how that made you feel to ask those sorts of questions about the ordinary little often ignored apple, right? I hope you felt like it was fun. Hope you felt like it was easy. Hope you felt like it was freeing, right? They're literally, and I know you've heard since day one of school, there's no such thing as a stupid question, but literally there isn't. And once upon a time, there was someone who said, what if we could fuel cars with electricity instead of petrol? And some people laughed about the room, and other people said, hang on, that's kind of interesting. Say more about that. And, Elon Musk was not the first person to ask those questions. He was the first to figure out how to monetize it and scale it. Once upon a time, someone asked, what if we could grow little tangerines without seeds so kids wouldn't choke on the seeds? Now, whatever your views are on Monsanto, it's an interesting question, right? So literally, in my view, there's nothing bad that can follow the phrase, I wonder if, I wonder what, right? So I want us to apply this process, this question asking to ourselves. And let me just show you what I want you to do. So I call this conversation, making your creative leap. And here's how the word leap breaks down. It's about helping you to leverage all that you have experienced, envisioning a stupid, crazy, audacious future, because you can always edit it down. You'll have to edit it down. Learning to act by asking new and different questions, and finally prototyping. And we're really going to be getting into the envisioning and acting piece. But let me just, as an example, if you're curious, what I mean by leveraging, our pains plus our gains are assets. And once you understand that what you have to offer and leverage aren't just what you can brag about on your emerging and evolving LinkedIn profile and your resume, but how you convert what are perceived pains and mistakes and failures, that combined your gains are actually assets. And so let me share a quick story. When I was about to graduate from Vassar, I naively applied for a fellowship that ended up being my first job. I horribly lived above the career services office senior year in Maine. And it was like every day I had to walk by career services to get to my room. And I was like, shit, it was bad. And right before winter break, I walked in, pulled out, got an application for something called the Urban Fellows Program. It looked interesting, like, do you want to change the world? Or you young person wants to change the world through urban development? I was like, I think I do. So I took the application. I went home. I typed it up. Yes, I said the word typed on a word processor. And I put a stamp on it, I mailed it, and I forgot all about it. And then like in March of senior year, I got a phone call and I'm like, congratulations, you've been selected for the second round of interviews. And I was like, I didn't even know there was like second round. Okay, cool. So I go to New York City for the second round of interviews. Now I was an anthropology and Africana studies major. And I get there and there's like government relations people from Harvard and Georgetown and poli-sci majors from Stanford and like people who like seem to really fit the bill. And I'm like an anthropology major who's doing I did my thesis on Black women's hair culture and I had this interview about, urban development and equity in cities. And I was like, shit, they're never gonna pick me. And they call my name and everyone is like, I guess I was pretty type A. I mean, I did go to Vassar, but I mean, these were like really type A people, they're like relative to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get this fellowship. I didn't have any jobs lined up. And basically I said to myself, current language, not back then, I'm gonna convert my pains and my gains into my assets. And I'm gonna make what's so different about me totally stand out. And so when I went into that conversation, I basically talked about how studying anthropology, yes, anthropology, Carlos, helped me to see society from a totally different perspective. I think about it as the worm's eye view of society. I was trained to ask very different sorts of questions than other people would. And I bullshitted my way through some other stuff, right? But that's what I mean by you have to begin to think about perceived disadvantages, even your flat out mistakes. What then has that made you better at? How did you convert them? How did that help you shift your mindset and your behaviors and your habits? So that's what I mean by leverage. So now here's a little time remaining. Here's a little bit of doing that I want you to try. So I want you to right now pick a problem, a challenge, situation that you have. I know that you chose to spend some of your time going through Sophomore Career Connection, which is, by the way, a brilliant program. I wish they had it when I was a Vassar student. It's amazing just to help situate you. But maybe you're worried about getting an internship. Did you pick the right major? I mean, whatever it is that you feel comfortable sharing. And here's what I want you to do. Take out that piece of paper and grab that pen and, oops, hang on. And I want you in the middle of your paper, I want you to draw a circle. And I want you to write that problem, that situation, that challenge, write it right in there. I'll give you 30 seconds, starting now, write it down. Ten seconds. Okay. That's the timer. On this side of your piece of paper, I want you to list 2 or 3 why questions about about, this is really hard to write with. Why questions about your perceived challenge situation? Why? Just write down 2 or 3 questions right now. 30 seconds, go. Five seconds left. Okay, at the top part of your piece of paper, I want you to pose 2 or 3. What? Oops, yikes. This is really challenging. You know where I'm going here. 2 or 3 what if questions right in this area. What if, build on these why questions. What if, 2 or 3, 30 seconds, go. Two seconds left. All right, and finally, I want you to pose 2 or 3, how might I fill in the blank? How might I think differently, reframe, etc., do an action around your why/what if questions? 30 seconds, please begin. Ten seconds. Okay, so Willa is going to divvy you up into breakout groups, and you're going to have like 13 minutes to just share. And here's the gist of what I want you to help each other share with. I really want you guys to help each other share on reframing the how and the what if, to give each other support about how you could creatively address this challenge, this situation. All right. Are there any clarifying questions before Will hits the button and you all break out? Is that clear? Yep. Awesome. Have fun. You have like 13 minutes. Go. Welcome back, everybody. So thank you for suspending judgment and engaging in those series of questions. And I'd love it if some of you wouldn't mind sharing. You don't need to share the situation, the challenge necessarily, but maybe if you want to just share one of the questions that emerged for you that stood out, as well as what was some of the feedback, support comments that you got from someone. So I'd love it if we have time maybe for like 3 people to share, that would be amazing.
All of us actually discussed that our main issue was applying for summer internships and different kind of experiences for the summer. And we all realized that we talked a lot about self-confidence and trying to feel more prepared, trying to feel proud of the work that we're doing. And we all discussed that this program has actually been really helpful, trying to meet people in our own fields and just in general, uplifting each other. So, yeah.
Do you mind sharing, was there a cool what if question or how question that you landed on that's gotten you to think even more?
Honestly, I can't remember specifics, but I was kind of surprised that I wasn't the only person that felt very like I was struggling with confidence.
Yeah.
We all felt kind of pressured, just in the way that we were like, what if this doesn't happen? What if we can't find an opportunity? But we ended up talking about it, and there are a lot of ways, like the CDO, this SEC, there are a lot of ways that we can reach out to people and try to find an opportunity.
That's awesome. And in addition to the dreaded, what if this doesn't work out? What if I don't get the internship of my dreams? there's the other way to frame that what if question, which is, what if I get the internship of my dreams? What if I am able to get a response within the next 2 months from my 2 top favorite picks? Then how might I make that happen, right? So always understanding that there's always this alternative side and reframing. Creativity is so much about reframing, to the point of the Carvana mashup of a vending machine and a car dealership, right? It's turning things inside out and upside down, which is another thing I really, really, really want to leave you guys with. Thank you so much for sharing that, Danielle. And yeah, you guys are not alone in feeling the fear. It's very real. The shaky confidence, and having small areas of success that you can point to. The way you're able to improvise, the things that you're learning, the people you're reaching out to, the conversations you're having, all of those add up, and they're super important. They all matter. Thank you for sharing that. Someone else, please.
I can share.
Thank you, Adelaide.
Sure. My group also talked about applying for summer internships. I think it's on a lot of people's minds right now. But one really cool how might I question that we talked about was how might I reframe thinking about the future? Like, I think for a lot of people, it's really scary to imagine a time where like even 6 months from now, it's like, oh my gosh, like half of Vassar is over and stuff. And especially during this time when things feel really uncertain. So even though that's a big picture question, like returning to that helped me reframe a bit.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I have a thought to add at the end that may or may not be helpful to you guys, but maybe it will be. One more person to share. Thank you, Adelaide. I love that reframing.
I can go because mine was a little different.
Thank you.
Okay, so mine was, my group talked about summer internships as well, but mine in particular was actually not summer internship related, because unlike many of you at this point, I am still undeclared. I've been going back and forth between 2 different majors that are very, very different, and some of my how might I questions were essentially how might I merge the two? How might I make astronomy more artistically creative? How might I bring it down from an upper echelon kind of position? How might I make opportunities for myself that merge astro with creative writing and things of that kind of nature? Simply because like I've been doubting, like, if I can really do just one or the other, and if I can handle both of them as a double major, you know what I mean? So like it's one of those things of like definitely needing to take a step back to process everything before going forward, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And thank you for sharing that, Amanda. Do I have a book for you? It's called The Jazz of Physics. It's by this really cool dude named Stefan Alexander. You gotta check out this book, The Jazz of Physics. Talk about mashups, talk about reframing. And that's an example of you converting perceived pains and amazing gains into your assets. All of you who are thinking like you're totally straddling and stretching, how do I bring this together? Incrementally start asking new questions about it. Instead of looking for solutions, just do when I say, I'm going to say this word, quiet storm. It's brainstorming by asking a series of questions. It just starts to open you up. And so thank you for the 3 of you who shared. I hope that you took some little nugget away from this. I hope it was helpful. And here's what I'd like to leave you all with, because the mental models that we have, the mental state that we have of feeling fear, of feeling insecure, uncertain, are real. And one of the first steps to dealing with that is to embrace it, is to acknowledge it. And so here's a thought experiment that I want to leave you with. In my view, one of the ways forward to really exercising our creativity is by exercising gratitude. And so here's one way that you can go about exercising gratitude, and then I'll explain why it's related to creativity. Take something like an ordinary glass of water, or water, as we say in the Illadelph. Now, here's the thought experiment. I think about how this feels in my hand. I think about who designed this. I then think about the glass blowers who might have made the initial prototype, the factory and the factory workers who were all part of creating these multitudes of mass-produced glasses, the folks at the docks who loaded the boxes onto the container ships, the retailers who stocked the shelves, and the gratitude that I can have in this present moment, the fact that I have a glass full of water, potable water, that's drinkable, right, that nourishes me. When you can just do this for 1 minute a day. When you practice gratitude, you begin in this way, you begin to see the interconnection between yourself and other things. And it takes away the feeling of alienation. It takes away the feeling of isolation, and it helps you to place yourself within the larger scheme of things. And in the process, you might find yourself doing, you're allowing your brain to move away from that frontal lobal work and let the neural synapses in other regions of our brains get ignited. And you may start to make connections and interconnections between previously unrelated things. Creativity is all about the mashup. Creativity is all about the remix. So practice these sorts of thought experiments, keep asking questions, and I guarantee you will be on your way to making incredible creative leaps where you're leveraging all that you've done. You're envisioning super crazy, audacious futures. You're acting through asking, and little by little, incrementally, you're prototyping. So that's my time. Thank you guys so much. It was a real pleasure being with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Sure.
All right. Well, we didn't get to lay on the floor of the Villard room with Sharpies, but I am feeling no less inspired. And I hope our students are feeling the same way as we get ready to head into our final evening of Identity at Work sessions tonight at 7 and 8 o'clock, gearing up for Steve Hatfield's keynote on the future of work. Again, amazing tie-in with the work that we did here today with Natalie. So inspirational, and gearing up as we head into the big weekend with mentors. So if we could all just give Natalie another round of applause and thanks. And get ready for that book.
Thank you guys. Bye.